Welcome to Flippity Flipped. In today's video, we are going to talk about 10 mistakes that I made in my reselling journey on eBay and what I learned. So this is going to be a case of do as I say, not as I did. And hopefully if you're a reseller or somebody who's looking to get into this business or even someone who thrifts for personal use, you can avoid some of these traps that I fell into, which will help you ultimately with your profit and not wasting money or losing money at the end of the day. So let's jump right in with our countdown, number 10. Mistake number 10, as you can see here, is what I've called emotional buying. So this is when you're in a thrift store or at an estate sale or wherever you might be, flea market, garage sale, doesn't matter. And maybe you get caught up and you get swept away by the cute factor. I know what happens to me. That's so cute. That's so pretty. That's so nice. That's not why we're buying when we're in the reselling gig, right? That might draw our eye initially, which is fine, but that's not a reason to buy something. Another example might be buying things that you like. Just because you like them does not mean they're going to sell on eBay. Another thing might be, just getting carried away with a lot of low dollar value items. Nothing wrong with that, but when you think about the amount of time and effort and energy and resources that you put into listing items on eBay, should you be focusing on items that you can list for $10 or items that you can list for $30? It probably takes about the same amount of time, and clearly one's going to make you a lot more profit than the other. So no more emotional buying. All right, let's talk about number 9. And this is the home takeover, as I'm calling it here. And it is what it sounds like. It's when you let your inventory, death pile, reselling business in general take over your entire home. Yes, I did this. I wish that I hadn't started out this way, but it's what happened. So let's talk about it. I didn't designate, I had one particular space, but I didn't designate enough space to hold my inventory. Obviously, if you've watched any of my other videos, and I'll put my link to my very first one up here where I talk about my insane death pile. That's how I started on my YouTube channel. I did not designate enough space or even enough kinds of spaces for all of the inventory that I was acquiring and would be obviously storing until it sold. So this is what this mistake is all about. Not designating a specific space or different kinds of spaces as you may need for your reselling inventory. That could be boxes. It could be totes. It could be hanging space. It could be a certain spot in your garage for big sort of oversized items. It's just, you got to have a space to put the stuff. If you're going to buy it, you better thinking about where you're going to store it while you're waiting for it to sell. So in my case, it ended up with boxes and piles everywhere, all in different spots of my home. It also, from my experience, came from not dealing with my piles of items, i.e. the hauls that I was bringing home from the thrift store, not dealing with them right away. So they kind of a pile ends up here and a little pile ends up there and then another bag over here and another box over there. And then you put some stuff in a tote and you shove it on a shelf over there. And before you know it, you have hundreds of items that you have not even addressed in any way, shape, or form. But not only is it inventory, everybody talks about the death pile when you talk about reselling, but what about all your supplies? You have shipping supplies, boxes, mailers, labels, all kinds of things, right? Cleaning supplies. So there's just a lot of stuff, I'll say generically, that goes with a reselling business. And you want to be thinking about how and where you're going to put it and how you're going to organize it. If you don't, you'll be in the situation that I found myself in, which was that it felt very overwhelming. And it really just, especially if it's in your home, has just sort of a low grade level of stress all the time. So this is another one to be avoided. All right, let's change it up a bit here. I don't know if you've all experienced this. I haven't had it too many times, but we'll throw it up here. This is number 8 in the countdown. and what I'm calling high maintenance buyers. So if you know what I mean, you might already know what I mean. But this is the buyer who has all kinds of sort of nitpicky questions, or, maybe the kinds of questions that they're asking, through communicating with you as a seller on eBay or any platform for that matter. You can just tell they didn't even read the listing. You've got whatever details they're asking for. They're either in the photos or they're in the description, and they're asking you. And, sometimes they're like, well, is it damaged? Does it have any rips? Is it clean? Go on and on, right? You know the kinds of questions I'm talking about here. For me, that just raises up a lot of red flags. And I do everything I can to hopefully actually not sell the item to that buyer. Again, this is just my opinion and my own personal experience. But my thoughts are that when you have a buyer who starts out, they haven't even bought it, but even just in that process of looking at an item, they're kind of already being, I'll just say, a little bit difficult. To me, that has a huge high probability of potentially turning into a return or negative feedback or just something going wrong with that order. So another one, lowball offers. Someone, like, you've got something listed for $99 and they throw you an offer of $20. I mean, for real? Like, did I make my price up just pulling numbers out of the sky? No. Well, hopefully we don't do that, right? So again, that's just another one. Sometimes we get feeling a little desperate, like we want to make sales, we want to get our sales numbers up, but I would caution you to think twice about accepting a really off the wall, lowball offer, because I don't know what's going on with that buyer. Do they really want the item? They're not willing to pay the sort of going price for the item. So just another one to think about. This type of what I'm calling high maintenance buyer, again, in my opinion, you are risking a return or some negative feedback or just something not going smoothly with that transaction. So up to you. But in my case, I felt it was a mistake that I made in a couple of cases, and I don't plan to do it again. All right, let's talk about number 7. I've called this category shoddy shipping. If you ship breakables, you already know we have to be so careful. I mean, I don't know if the people in the mail and postage and courier delivery business are all wannabe football players, that they're literally tossing those packages around. I joke, but we do know, just like at airports, the stuff gets thrown around, right? It is not treated with kid gloves. So if you're going to be shipping breakables, as I do, you need to use the right size and type of boxes. You need to package things in the right way, or else, of course, you risk the item arriving broken. I have an example of this. I'll throw a picture up on the screen. I sold this beautiful neoprene covered glass coffee carafe, sort of a pour over thing. And I had purchased it for just a few dollars at the Goodwill and sold it for $69.99. Hooray, plus shipping. Now, I was in a bit of a hurry. There was a bit of a situation around that day, and I rushed it, and I did not do a proper floating box method. I did not fill the item with packing peanuts or otherwise, secure it sort of from the inside of this very fragile glass carafe. I thought I had packed it okay, but we'll throw up a second image. This is how the buyer received it. So needless to say, and understandably so, they were not thrilled to pay $70 plus shipping, and it was probably $20 or $25 shipping, because we're talking about Canada shipping here, folks, and it arrives broken. So I had to, get photos from the buyer so I could file a claim, because the shipping has $100 of insurance. And side note, breakables are not covered. This particular item was shipped with Canada Post / USPS, because when it goes into the US, it changes hands over to USPS. So who broke it? Was it Canada Post? Was it USPS? I'll never know. In any case, oh no, insurance doesn't cover breakables. So I got a refund of the shipping costs, but I had to, of course, refund the buyer the cost of the item that they purchased. So I didn't lose that much money. I mean, like I said, I only paid a few dollars for the item originally, but what I did lose was about $60 worth of profit because that item was broken. So that's, of course, the most extreme example is when something arrives and it's actually damaged. But I would say as far as this shoddy shipping category, it's really just even thinking beyond that about what is your buyer experience in terms of you want to get good feedback on eBay. You want to become a top rated seller. You want to have that, as close to 100% positive feedback score as you can get, which I'm very grateful to have. And it's all about that your items are carefully packaged. I mean, I'm not saying you can't ship things in a poly mailer, but just think about the experience your buyer has. Do you want them to be delighted when they open something, or do you want them to be like, oh, yeah, okay? I mean, your choice. But for me, I'm always looking to create a nice little, call it unboxing experience, no matter what that buyer is purchasing from me, breakable or not. Lessons learned there? Yes, it's the one and only time that I have had something arrive damaged, and I hope it was the last time too. Let's move into number 6. I'm calling this one pricey pickups. So let me give you an example of what I'm talking about here. Through 2 months into my whole reselling journey, did I know it all? No, I don't know it all today. And I've been doing it for a couple of years now. I went on a vacation to Cabo San Lucas, Mexico. And I was so gung-ho and excited about this whole thrifting and reselling game that, while I was on vacation down there, I was like, are there any thrift stores here in the Cabo San Lucas area? Are there any, vintage shops, secondhand? Can I find anything that I can take home with me and sell it on eBay? And what do you know? I found this really cool little, I guess it was like a thrift shop, secondhand store. And they had some very beautiful handbags and regular stuff too. Anyway, I saw this gorgeous Ted Baker, who's, if you don't know, English, I believe, designer, because it usually says Ted Baker London. Anyway, I found this beautiful handbag. And when I did the conversion from, I can't even remember truthfully if it was in pesos or if it was in American dollars, being that I was in Mexico. Anyway, after conversion and putting it through my credit card and currency and all the rest of it, I paid $69 for it. For me, that's a lot. Now, I had done some comps. Again, I thought I knew what I was doing. I thought, oh my goodness, this purse could easily sell for $150, maybe even more. Well, cut to, it's been on my eBay store for several months, and and Poshmark and Facebook Marketplace, because I used to list on all 3 platforms, and it was not selling. It was getting lots of interest. Lots of people were looking at it, but nobody was buying it. So what does that tell me? I can't remember what I had it listed for. Something like probably $99 or something like that. Anyway, long story short, I had anxiety over having, again, not that I can't afford to lose $69. Wasn't really the point, but the fact that I had sort of, quote, invested $69 of my own money in this item that I was hoping to flip, and it was sitting there month after month after month, just created some sort of feeling. I had some feelings over that, and they weren't good. So finally, it took 6 months, and it ended up, I just wanted to be rid of it so that I wasn't constantly seeing people looking at it but not buying it. So I took an offer, I think it was for $80. That was on Poshmark. So after the 20% Poshmark fee, I ended up losing $5.24 on that item. Quite frankly, I was just glad to have it gone. But lesson learned for me anyway. Now, I'm not saying I wouldn't buy something for $100 if I thought I could sell it for $1,000. But you just have to know going in, and I didn't in those first couple of months, that you might be sitting on something for months or longer, particularly if it is a high ticket item, and you have to be okay with that. So just recognize when you're paying up for something that you are tying up your money. You don't know how long that particular item is going to take to flip. And the questions to ask yourself are, could you buy other items with that same amount of money and flip them faster and sort of turn around that money and start reinvesting it more quickly? And then the other thing is, just set a limit for yourself as to sort of what you can tolerate in terms of investing into a single item that's not going to sort of drive you crazy like this particular one did for me. So that's, again, maybe a little bit different than you've heard before, but certainly that was something like I felt, not a big mistake, not a life-changing mistake, but just something I wanted to be aware of and perhaps not do to myself again. Okay, now, number 5, high stakes deliveries. Does that sound dramatic enough for you? Well, I am talking about shipping here, and I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story about why I put this as number 5 on my countdown. So if you've watched any of my previous videos, the last couple of my videos, I think I mentioned it, I had this amazing epic flip of a beautiful sterling solid silver and turquoise Native American concho belt that I picked up at the Goodwill bins for $2 in Tucson, Arizona, and sold for, ready? $800 on eBay in 1 hour. Nice sale. Anyway, the story here is not about that epic flip, although I love telling that story as often as I can. What I did, the mistake I made, and why I'm calling this category high stakes deliveries, is I printed out my shipping label off eBay, and quite frankly, I've never sold anything that expensive before on eBay, where I would even worry about something like this. Anyway, I printed out the label, and I was like, oh, it didn't give me an option through the eBay platform, or at least I didn't see it, or I didn't know how, if it is available. Tell me in the comments below if I messed that up. Anyway, I did not see an option to request the buyer's signature upon delivery, i.e. to prove that the buyer did in fact receive the item beyond just the tracking through the shipper. And I also didn't buy any extra insurance. So I think I had numerous items to ship that day. So I got it all ready, put the label on. This was all going on in the back of my mind, but I was like, I'll deal with it when I get to the post office. So I get to the post office, Canada Post in this case, and I said, can I pay extra and require a signature, or can I also increase the insurance? $100 was included, but as I just said, I sold it for $800. And to my surprise, the agent at the post office said, oh no, we can't do that when you've pre-purchased the label like this. You would have to go back, cancel the label, and also, do those add-ons, I guess, at the time of purchase. So A, I didn't know how to do it on eBay. B, I was thinking, should I just take a chance? And C, I was, kind of in a hurry, and I really wanted to get that item out the door and on the way to the buyer. So I just went with it. Now, the story could go one of two ways, right? If you watched my other video, buyer received it, buyer was happy. But I was on pins and needles the whole time thinking how silly that was, how I should not have rushed like that, how I should have been more careful and taken the time and figured it out to put a signature and so on. Now, you've probably seen videos, if you watch reseller content here on YouTube, you've probably seen videos of people who got scammed by buyers, sellers who got scammed by buyers on eBay. And all of this was, of course, going around in my head in the days and, week or week and a half, whatever it took for it to get there. All of this is going through my head. Like, what if the buyer, even if it says the tracking shows it's delivered, what if the buyer says, I never received it? I'm going to have to issue an $800 refund because I have no way of proving otherwise. Or, what if it gets lost in the mail? Legit, the tracking shows it's never delivered. Of course, I have to refund the buyer. Now, again, just like the broken coffee carafe, I'm not losing $800 per se. I only paid $2 for the item, but what I'm losing is that potential profit, right? So all of this to say, in my case, it turned out okay, but if you don't, especially on high price items, take into account these things when it comes to shipping, you could be setting yourself up for a sleepless night. But I'll throw up the feedback that I actually got from the buyer. Great seller, love my belt, and did that ever make my day and ease my mind when I saw that on eBay. All right, we're getting to the top of the list. We're getting to the bad ones, I guess. And number 4, I'm calling ad hoc inventory. I talked earlier about just not having a designated space and basically letting everything take over your whole home. What I'm talking about here is a little bit different than that, and this is more about organization. So this is having designated spaces for different types of items. So if you sell all one thing, then you have a certain way of storing it, and it's very, very similar. But if you're an everything seller like me, and you have clothing, you have shoes, handbags, electronics, breakables, home decor, golf bags, like you name it, right? I sell it. You need different types of spaces for this. Some stuff needs to hang, clothing and things like that, perhaps. Some stuff needs to go on shelves, like glass vases, crystal wine glasses, things like this. Some things need to go in bins, like shoes, whatever. Doesn't matter, but the point is you need to be thoughtful before you end up with thousands of items like I did, and make sure you've thought about how and where you're going to store these things, and that you have proper containers or ways of storing them. So it could be cardboard boxes, it could be plastic totes, it could be, a rail where you have things hanging on it. You have to think about really tiny items and how you're going to protect them and be able to find them. You have to think about oversized items like, golf bags and big things. So again, just thinking about what kind of seller are you, or are you planning to be, and how are you going to look after all those items? Because the worst thing, and it has happened to me only a couple of times, the worst thing is when, let's say you have a set of 5 wine glasses and you've got them stored and something happened in the process of storing them and somebody buys them, cha-ching, there's $80, and you go and find that one has a crack. Well, now you've just had to go and tell the buyer, guess what? It's not 5, it's 4. Do you still want it? Would you like to cancel? It's just icky. We don't want these situations. I mean, let's be real. Things are going to happen, but we want to do everything we can to avoid it as much as possible. The other thing around this whole ad hoc inventory category is organization. So how are you labeling items? Are you storing things by category of item, or is it just random ad hoc everywhere? Are you going to use SKU numbers on your items? All of this to basically say, are you going to be able to find it when it sells? Now, the smaller your store, the less of an issue this is. I have a great memory, and when I was managing everything myself, I could literally, of the couple hundred items I had listed, if one sold, I could find it in 2 seconds. I knew exactly where everything was. When Nathan came and we scaled up and listed over 1,000 items during the course of the summer, and I now have 1,300 items in my store, many of which I did not handle. He handled them, and all I did is online review of the listing. I need to know how to find those items. So that was the last thing we did actually before Nathan left to go back to university, was kind of go through all the 1,300 items, group them where they had not been grouped into categories before, just so I would have a chance of being able to find them when they ultimately sold. So that's the bottom line, is whatever method works for you. I'm not here to dictate how you should do it, just that you should do it so that you can efficiently and successfully find every single item, big, large, small, whatever it is, when you get that coveted sale. Number 3, we're in the top 3 now. And you've heard me talk about this before, but you can see here, sporadic listing. Doing some listings and then not doing listings for a while. Adding a bunch of listings and then not doing it listings for several days or weeks. And then going through a blitz, getting some motivation, putting a bunch of new items up there, and then not again. You get the point. And what I will say, and I have said before, and what has been proven in my own experience on my store, is that eBay rewards consistency. So it's not about the total number of items that you have in your store at any given point in time. At least I don't think so. I do think it's about regularly and consistently listing items every day. So, hey, who wants to work 7 days a week? I mean, a lot of people end up working 7 days a week, but you have options here. You don't have to actually sit down and take photos and, list items every single day. You can build up a bank of items, drafts as they are called in the eBay platform, and then you have the opportunity to schedule those out. So that's exactly what we were doing. I mean, heck, one day Nathan and I did a listing challenge. I'll put the video up here, where we actually listed or prepared 100 listings in one day. Well, I certainly wasn't going to drop all those listings the next day on eBay. No, I had the opportunity at 10 a day to schedule them out for the next 10 days. And what that did, of course, as you can understand, is take the pressure off. Now, we still kept going. And, after the weekend, when the new work week started, Nathan started preparing more listings. But it took some of the pressure off knowing we had this sort of advanced bank of listings. So that's a really great tool, in my opinion, to help with that consistency factor, because nobody's necessarily going to be sitting and taking photos and preparing listings every single day. Do them in a batch, schedule them out for a few days, and then do another batch and do the same thing. So those bulk processes can help you be really efficient. And then that scheduling feature can help you be very consistent. So my sort of bottom line here with this particular mistake, which I had to learn over and over myself, is it is better to list a smaller number of items, in my opinion, and do it every day than to put a bunch of items on and then do nothing for X number of days. So that's my take on it. Love to hear in the comments below if you agree or disagree with that method, and if you have any other tips or tricks on how to achieve this kind of consistency. Number 2, I'm calling this missing metrics. Do you like these snazzy little names that I came up with? Well, let me explain what I'm talking about here. When I talk about metrics, these are different statistics that you can look at, or different things you can look at when you're deciding, even right in the thrift store, should I buy this or should I not? Or how much money could I make with this? Or is it worth even picking up? So we probably all know, if you've been watching other reseller content or any of my older videos, you would know that we can all look on eBay and other platforms to look up comps, right? These are comparables to whatever it is you're looking at in the thrift store. Now, a key thing to look at here, most of you probably already know this, but I'm going to say it in case there's anybody new here. It's great to look at how many of the same item are currently listed on eBay for sale, but more importantly, you need to filter on that eBay lookup to how many have actually sold. And listing prices versus sold prices can vary considerably. I can list a pencil for $1 million. eBay is not going to stop me from doing that. Is that a good comp if you are going to pick up a pencil in the thrift store? Of course not. So listed versus sold, that's one of the key metrics that you really need to be paying attention to. And then I want to take this a step further and talk about, when I'm talking about missing metrics here, being imprecise or not specific enough with the types of comps that you're looking up. So let me give you an example. As I understand it, Abercrombie and Fitch are having some sort of revival, certain pieces. I think some actress wore it in a movie or some such thing. There's some sweater and certain pieces that are like super hot right now. And this always happens with fashion and, movies and influencers, TV, whatever. So what I'm going to say here is there are specific Abercrombie and Fitch pieces that can go for great money right now. Does that mean that every piece of Abercrombie and Fitch clothing or accessories that you see, you should be picking it up? Absolutely not. So you can't look up comps just based on a brand, even like within brands. So take Ralph Lauren, for example. There's different colors and different types of labels within the Ralph Lauren line, some of which, I think it's the purple, go for like the highest amount of money, whereas the sort of mall brand level, or certainly the outlet store merchandise, may not go for the same kind of money. So being more specific with your comps, and even down to like the color or the style, like say let's just talk about a sweater. If you look up a certain brand, black sweater, that might have a different comp than that same brand, that same sweater, but in red or in green. So again, as you get more evolved in your own reselling journey, you can get a lot more specific with comps to get a better idea of this particular item you're looking at and what it might bring. And then the last one is how quickly it might sell. So you've heard many other resellers talk about it, and I'm going to say it here because I would be remiss if I didn't. Looking at listings, looking at sold comps is great, but you really need to consider the sell-through rate. There's no one right or wrong answer in terms of what is an acceptable sell-through rate, but what you can count on is the lower the sell-through rate. I'm not saying it will never sell, but you'll be holding on to it for a really long time, okay? So that's where sell-through rate becomes important. When you're defining the type of reseller that you want to be, is how quickly do you want your items to turn over? That can be a function of how much money can you afford to have invested in inventory that is sitting there not selling. Number two, it can be a function of how much space do you have to store items until they sell. If you have, little money that you just need things to keep turning over, and you have limited space where you can't just keep adding on, then you need to be looking for items that have much higher sell-through rates so that you're just getting it on, getting it sold, moving on to the next. Versus someone who has a lot of space, who can afford the capital to stay invested in those items, waiting for them to sell, okay? So the one other thing I'll just say about metrics and comps and things like that is when you look up on eBay, the listings and the sold, you're seeing the past 90 days. Well, as you all know, and if you don't, I live in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. We have winter up here. So if I'm looking up a really nice pair of leather winter boots in July, am I going to see a ton of comps from the previous 90 days? It's the middle of summer, so people are not wearing winter boots in the middle of summer and haven't for a few months. So my point is, there are other ways to research through the eBay research tools where you can go back longer than 90 days for seasonal type items, especially, just to see, and same with like holiday stuff or, seasonal, summer stuff, winter stuff, you name it. You can go back longer to get a more true picture of the comps. So all of that to say, yes, it's not as easy as just going in the thrift store. That's cute. I think that's worth money. Hey, I know that brand sells for a lot at the mall. You got to do the research if you want to spend your money and invest your money, I should say, in inventory that's going to bring you potentially the highest amount of profit and in the shortest amount of time. What do I think is the number one mistake, certainly in my own journey, and I would argue one that many, many resellers fall into? Let's put it up here. I'm calling this too much, too fast. Yeah, it's what it sounds like, folks. Again, remember I said earlier in the video that my entire YouTube journey started with talking about my outrageous death pile. Yes, there's been more than a few videos done about the death pile in my case. And based on all the comments I received from so many of you viewers and other resellers that I speak to out in the world, this is a common problem. There are some who've licked it, and to those I say, congrats and kudos to you. Good on you. But many of us struggle with this, and particularly when you're starting out. It's so easy to fall into the trap of overbuying, just the excitement and good grief, let me say, when you make your first sale, there's some kind of dopamine hit and adrenaline that comes with that, where you just want to run out and find as many of those particular things as you can. Don't do it. Anyway, one sale does not mean go out and buy every single thing like that, okay? Again, remember those missing metrics? We need to go back and see how often does that actually happen for that kind of item. So really what I'm talking about here is discipline. It's not getting carried away. And remember I said at the beginning, do as I say, not as I do? Yeah, I'm the most guilty of this. That's why it's number one on my top 10 list. But if I was to, give advice to someone starting out or earlier in their journey, go slow, just take it easy and figure out how much you can reasonably and consistently process in a day or in a week or in a month. So like I say, it's really easy to go to the thrift store and look at all these deals. If this is $1, this is $3.99. Look at this amazing thing for $7.99. It's worth $100. So easy, isn't it, to get carried away? But trust me when I say, when you have piles all over your house, when you have a storage unit of thousands of items, when you have to hire help just to not be so overwhelmed that you're almost paralyzed by it all, yeah, don't do it. So again, another thing I'm doing related to this too much too fast is paying for storage. This is my own choice. As I have said somewhere before, I have room, I could bring it all into my house. I just don't want to. And I am able to afford to pay for the storage unit. Is it a wise business move? No, absolutely not. You want to try to keep your expenses as low as possible when you're running your own business. So again, as much as I may have business background and so on, I'm not saying I've made the smartest business decisions in this case. I am now digging myself out of it. I prefer to think of it, instead of a death pile sitting in the storage unit, as a money pile of future items that I will be able to list and sell for profit. Anyway, long-term thinking, not a smart short-term strategy, that's for sure. So try not to go too much too fast. And if you find yourself in that situation, by all means, put on the brakes, take stock of where you're at, get a plan of how you're going to get it under control, and stay out of the thrift stores. This is my thing. I have to stay out of the thrift stores as much as I can now, despite the fact that I make thrift with me videos. I try not to buy too much stuff, even when I'm doing a video like that, knowing that I have literally a couple thousand items not even listed for sale. So try not to do too much too fast, and you will thank yourself for not getting overwhelmed. So with all that said, let me throw up the list of the top 10 just to recap them for you. The number one, I think you all know, just take a look at my channel, Too Much Too Fast. But it's so easy to do. I'm going to throw up another link right here to the video I did. If you haven't seen it, because not a lot of people have watched this video of mine, of my behind the scenes, all access Goodwill bins tour. And I think the thumbnail on that video says something like 50 million pounds. That's how much stuff the Goodwill bins in my city, Calgary, Alberta, processes in 1 year of donations. 50 million pounds. So is it no wonder that so many of us get caught up too much too fast? My number one error. Yeah, because there's just so much of it out there, right? Now, I know not everyone has access to this much stuff, but if you live in a larger center, I'm sure you probably do too. So these are my top 10 no-nos. Try to avoid them. It will help your business in the end. It will reduce your stress and make you just a more efficient business owner. So with all that said, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate each and every one of you. The last video I did, I am so blown away. It did so well. I've got so many new viewers. I hope you're here watching again. And I always a special heartfelt thank you to my loyal viewers who've been with me all along. You know who you are. And stay tuned, because my next video, I'm just going to leave a little teaser here. It's going to be a little dramatic and a little change of pace. So watch for that coming soon. Thanks for watching. Bye.